Okay. Okay. Um, Something changed on my screen, but it's okay. Usually I have my participants on the right-hand side, and they disappeared. And I have a full screen, but it doesn't matter. I am recording. That is working. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. I have us, last time we met 2 weeks ago, we had started chapter 4, and we're up to verse 8. So let me just read in English the first 7 verses. Did I just do the blessing?
Yes.
Yeah. It's the second time
You
this week.
did have a birthday.
Yeah.
No, it's the same thing. Can you remember brushing your teeth this morning? I mean, it's something you do all the time. You just don't remember.
That's right. Okay. And the children of Israel again did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. I'm on page 185, when Ehud was dead. And the Lord gave them over into the hand of Yavin, king of Canaan, that reigned in Chatzor, the captain of whose host was Sisera, who dwelt in Charoshet Goyim. And the children of Israel cried unto the Lord, for he had 900 chariots of iron, and 20 years he mightily oppressed the children of Israel. Now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidot, she judged Israel at that time. And she sat under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Beit El in the hill country of Ephraim. And the children of Israel came up to her for judgment. And she sent and called Barak, the son of Avinoam, out of Kedesh Naphtali, and said unto him, has not the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded, saying, go and draw toward Mount Tabor, and take with thee 10,000 men of the children of Naphtali and the children of Zebulun? And I will draw unto thee to the brook Kishon Sisera, the captain of Yavin's army, with his chariots and his multitude, and I will deliver him unto thy hand. Okay, so that's where we had left off. We're on page 188. And so that's the context as we're about to continue. I just want to see if we had read the commentary. Yes, we had done the comments on these first 7 verses also.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. So let me just, okay. And so let's go on then. So again, the unusual thing is that we have a woman judge who's also listed as named as a prophet. The other judges are not named as prophets. All the other judges are inspired by God in order to be victorious in their battles. So but they're not a prophet in that the prophet is supposed to teach the people, preach to the people. The judges don't do that. The judges just act, okay? But Deborah is called a prophet. Okay, and so this is the thing. So Deborah is going to lure Sisera, the captain of Yavin's Canaanite army, towards Mount Tabor, where Barak, who Deborah is enlisting to be the head of this military force for the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun, right? Not the entire people of Israel, just Naphtali and Zebulun are taking part in this battle that she's going to arrange. Okay, so verse 8. Vayomer eleha Barak, im telchi imi v'halachti, v'im lo telchi imi lo elech. So Barak said to her, if you go with me, I'll go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go. So in other words, she said to him, I'm going to do this, you're going to do that, right? I'm going to draw Sisera, but you get the army together. He said, no, I'll only do it if we do it together. 9, Vatomer, haloch elech imach, efes kilo tihiyat tif'artecha al haderech asher ata holech, Ki biyad isha yimkur Adonai et Sisra, vatakom devara, vatelech im barak kedsha. So she said, I will definitely go with you. Yeah, even though the word ephes there is a hard word. It's not really used in this context in modern Hebrew. Ephes in modern Hebrew just means zero, as in the number zero. Um, so notwithstanding that the kiloti, your glory will not be with you on the journey that you go, because God is giving over Sisera to a woman. So that's how I'm translating it. I will surely go with you, notwithstanding the journey that you take shall not be for your honor, for the Lord will give Sisera over into the hand of a woman. So in other words, right, I'll go with you, but understand God's doing whatever God's doing because of me, not because of you, even though I'm a woman. And Devorah got up and went with Barak to Kedesh. So let's look at the commentary on these two verses down below on 188. If you will go, etc. It was not cowardice which prompted the condition, but a sense of the powerful influence exercised by the prophetess over the people. Her presence would be a source of inspiration and assurance of divine aid. So according to Ralbag, who is Levi ben Gershon, or also known as Gersonides, from like the 1300s or so in the Middle Ages, he's saying that he wants Deborah with him because it's clear to him and everybody that Deborah is a woman of God. So he wants to have that extra kind of a security blanket, having Deborah with him. So 9, a woman. The context makes it clear that the reference is to Deborah and not Yael. She comes a little bit later in the story. Her compliance with his condition will deprive Barak of the glory of the victory. If it were Yael whom she meant, the remark would be pointless, because Yael's part in the enemy's defeat was not dependent on whether the prophetess accompanied Barak or not. According to Ralbag, Deborah was prophesying Sisera's fall by the hand of a woman in a double sense, her own and Yael's. Right, so God will give over Sisera into the hand of a woman. So because the commentators have read ahead and know the whole story, we know the story too from the Haftarah. Every year on the portion Bishalach, it's Yael who gets Sisera to go into her tent, and she's with the food, at least according to the story, maybe through other means as well, gets him to go to sleep, and she drives a tent peg through his temple, okay, and kills Sisera. So the idea here is it Deborah who is bringing Sisera into a woman's hand, or is it that's the woman that the verse is talking about, or is it Yael that is being talked about? So, okay.
So Deborah is prophetized. She's foreseeing the future.
Yes, she's saying
Isn't that remarkable?
Why? Prophets do that.
Oh, okay.
What do you mean? What would be more remarkable here?
Or maybe that's why she's considered a prophet. I mean, a prophetess.
Oh, because that too.
A prophet teaches, doesn't see the future necessarily.
Well, other prophets do predict what will happen. The main ones, Isaiah and Jeremiah, predict Israel's exile, and no matter what Israel will do to avoid it, nothing will work, because it's foreordained by God that they're going to go into exile. So Isaiah and Jeremiah also do that, and other other prophets do it as well. So there's nothing unusual about what Deborah's saying
Is
here.
this the only time it's mentioned that she's a woman? I mean, it's pointed out. It's besides.
I don't know. We'll see.
And this is the first of two women who effectively kill a military leader of the opposition, right? Isn't there a corollary story of another woman who
Well,
kills
Judith?
there's a Hanukkah story that isn't in the Bible, but is in the books that don't make it into the Bible. Yeah, Judith and the general Holofernes, who as she fed him cheese, which is why there is a tradition to eat cheese on Hanukkah, and she kills him. Or because she fed him cheese, does she kill him, or she allows somebody come into the tent to kill him? I don't remember the exact story, but she's a hero of Hanukkah.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. 10. Okay. Well, there's one last comment there on 9 to Kedesh, where he mustered his troops. Okay. 10. Vayazek Barak et Zvulun ve'et Naphtali Kedsha v'ya'al biraglav aseret alfei ish v'ta'al imo devora. So Barak called out to Zebulun and Naphtali to come to Kedesh, and so with their feet there were 10,000 men who, and Devora went up with him. Vechever hakeni nifrad mikayin mibnei chovav chotein Moshe vayet ohalo ad elon b'tza'anayim asher. Oh, there's an asterisk there. I read it as tza'anayim. The little footnote there in small print says we're supposed to read it Sa'ananim. So there's supposed to be two nuns there. That's the way it's supposed to be read. Okay, and the English translation is based on how it's supposed to be read. So Vayet ohalo ad elon b'tza'ananim asher et Kedesh. So Hever the Kenite had severed himself from the Kenites, even from the children of Chovav, the father-in-law of Moses, and had pitched his tent as up to Elon B'tza'ananim, which is by Kedesh. Okay, so we're being, this is a parenthetical note that here we have Barak mustering 10,000 troops. And by the way, near there, where they're mustering, is this guy, Hever the Kenite, who is related to Chovav, which is another word for Jethro, which is a whole other discussion. There are different names to Jethro in the Torah and also in the Bible. It says this is Moses' father-in-law. So somehow a segment of Moses's family, his in-laws' family, is there by Kedesh. Okay? Vayagidu leSisra, verse 12, ki ala Barak ben Avinoam har Tavor. And so the word got to Sisera that Barak, son of Avinoam, had come up to Mount Tavor. 13. Vayazek Sisra et kol richbo tish'a me'ot rechev barzel ve'et kol ha'am asher ito me charoshet hagoyim el nachal Kishon. So Sisera called out to his chariots, 900 iron chariots, and all the people that was with him from Charoshet Goyim to the Kishon brook. Vatomer devara el Barak, kum ki zeh hayom asher natan Adonai et Sisra biyadecha. Halo Adonai yatsa lefanecha, vayered Barak mehar Tavor v'aseret alafim ish acharav. So, Devorah said to Barak, rise, because this is the day that God has given Sisera into your hand. Hasn't God gone out before you? And so Barak went down from Mount Tabor, and 10,000 men followed him. 15, Vayaham Adonai et Sisra, ve'et kol harechev, ve'et kol hamachaneh, lefi cherev, lifnei Barak, vayered Sisra me'al hamerkava, vayanas beraglav. So God, it's translated discomfited, but let me just see how Alter translates that. Panicked, caused Sisera to panic. Okay, so God caused Sisera to panic, and all the chariots and all of his camp fell by sword before Barak, and Sisera went down from off the chariot and ran away by foot. 16, Uvarak radaf acharei harechev v'acharei hamachaneh ad charoshet hagoyim vayipol kol machaneh Sisra lefi cherev lo nishar ad echad. And Barak chased after the chariots and after the camp until Charoshet Goyim, that's where Sisera came from. So he chased after them back to Charoshet Goyim, and from the camp of all of Sisera's camp fell by the sword, not one remained, and that means remained alive. There wasn't anyone left from this battle. Okay, so let's stop here and let's look at the commentary on this section. So verse 10 through 16. So here on 189, there went up. The form of the verb can be construed either as kal or as hifil. Okay, that doesn't matter. If the former, the subject, notwithstanding the singular verb, is 10,000 men. If the latter, it is Barak. So whether it's Barak or all of the 10,000 with him, that's who went up. At his feet, that is behind him, with him. So most commentators, some understood it as on foot, contrasting Barak's poorly equipped force with that of Sisera. Yeah, we don't know if he had chariots. We do know that he had 10,000 men. 10,000 men who defeated 900 chariots. I think that's supposed to mean that was an unusual victory of the underdog. That, in other words, imagine foot soldiers fighting against tanks today. You really foot soldiers are not supposed to win against tanks, right? Because tanks they just can run you over and give you this other advantage. Okay, so same with chariots. Okay, verse 11 in the commentary on 189, the information provided by this verse is essential for understanding the part played by the Kenites in the battle about to begin. The narrator chose this point to give the relevant details in order to avoid the need for interrupting the story of the battle. All right, well, we haven't read about the role of the Kenites in the battle yet. We just know that they're there, and that right now Barak has chased Sisera's army back to where they came from. Chever, although the name of a Kenite, it is Hebraic and was born by a grandson of Asher and by a Judahite. Okay, so it's not just Moses's in-laws' family name, it's also a Hebrew name. Severed himself, but still adhered to the religion of Israel adopted by their ancestor Jethro. This explains Yael's patriotism and Sisera's trust in her. All right, so in other words, the Kenite then serves a dual role. That is, the Canaanites can trust them, but the Israelites can trust them too. So even though they're non-Israelites, according to the commentary, they're acting as Jews and they're related to Moses. So therefore, they could be trusted by Israelites. But because they're not Israelite, Canaanites can trust them too. So she can, Yael, which will be introduced soon, apparently as a Kenite. And so she becomes integral in the story.
Is that kind of like the Druze today in
I was
Israel?
thinking that, though the Druze do serve, the Israeli Druze serve in the army, but their cousins who live across the border in Syria, clearly. So the Druze, they're not necessarily Arab. They're their own sect. So yeah, that it could be that way. Maybe like the Bedouin also. Okay. The Kenites, that is the main body of this tribe, which roamed the desert south of Judah. Chovav, one of the 7 names by which Jethro was known for father-in-law, see on 116. Right. Right. So I told you there are several names for Jethro. Elon Bet Sa'ananim, literally plain of the marshes, mentioned in the Jerusalem Talmud as the marshes of Kedesh. It was the northernmost limit of Hever's wanderings on the boundary of Naphtali. He was staying there at the time of the battle with Sisera. They told, indefinite subject corresponding to he was told. Gathered together, the verb za'ak in the Hefil signifies call out, assemble, by means of the war cry or trumpet blast. On 190, 900 chariots of iron, see on verse 3. Up, literally arise, a call to action, is not the Lord, etc. As in verse 6, the question is rhetorical, serving as a forceful asseveration. Okay. Gone before, that is to battle, the phrase is used of a leader at the head of his army. Went down to attack Sisera's army. The text does not convey the suddenness of the onslaught and the surprise of the enemy. Discomfited, struck them with panic, resulting in confusion and mad flight. According to Josephus, a hailstorm occurred, and the wind blew the rain in the faces of the Canaanites, and so darkened their eyes that their arrows and slings were of no advantage to them, nor would the coldness of the air permit their soldiers to use their swords, while the storm did not much incommode the Israelites because it came on their backs. So we don't know where Josephus gets his history, his so-called history from. Perhaps there was an oral tradition that Josephus had about the history of Israel that did not make it into the Bible. Perhaps, we don't know. Or it was an oral tradition that not only Josephus had, but was around at the time in the land of Israel, told by the Israelites. And for some reason, maybe Josephus wrote it down in his history to then be remembered for posterity. We don't know. I'm not sure because I haven't looked at Josephus since I was in college, but it's possible that his introduction, if he has one, says where he got the history from, but maybe not. So I have the book on my shelf, but I'd have to see. So in other words, there's this tradition here that isn't from the Midrash, because it would have said here that it's from the Midrash also. It's some tradition about how this battle came to be. Like the detail isn't here. It just says Barak came down the mountain with his 10,000 troops, and they defeated, God caused panic for Sisera and his army, and he was able to defeat them, and not one alive, and Sisera ran away. Okay, so how did that happen? So could have been, as Josephus says, a hailstorm. Okay, so on the right-hand side, all his host, the infantry, before Barak, that is, before Barak's arrival. The entire army had become confused and demoralized until their commander abandoned his floundering chariot in the morass of the Kishon and fled for his life from the field on foot. Not a man, that is, literally, not unto one. No fugitive reached the safety of the city. Okay. So we go on, 17. V'sisra nas beraglav el ohel Yael eshet chever hakeni ki shalom bein Yavin melech Chatzor uvein beit chever hakeni. So Sisera fled, just a second, Sisera fled on foot to the tent of Yael, the wife of Chever the Kenite, because there was peace between Yavin, the king of Chatzor, and between the house of Chever the Kenite. So it's interesting why a man is going into a married woman's tent. Now, this would be an issue for Israelites. Is it an issue for Canaanites? I don't know. It's just interesting to me that there's a detail here that she's a married woman. Is she a widow? She's like, or is Chever still alive? So I don't know. We'll see if the commentary says anything about it. 18. Vateitze Yael likrat Sisra, vatomer elav, Surah Adoni, Surah Elai, Altira, Altira, Vayasar Eleha ha'ohela, Vatechasehu basmicha. So Yael went out, like she sees him coming to her tent. He goes out, she goes out to greet Sisera and says to him, come here, or hurry in here, my lord. It says turn in. So come in, my lord, come in to me. Don't be afraid. And and he turned to her to the tent, and she covered him in a blanket. In modern Hebrew, it's a blanket. So that's that's why I translated it as blanket. It says here a rug. Okay, 19. So it's, yeah, go ahead, Bess.
Two questions. First
Yeah.
of all, she recognizes him, and second of all, do they speak the same language?
That's interesting. What language were they speaking? Well, I would imagine the Canaanites speak a Canaanite language. I don't know what. Do the Kenites, maybe the Kenites speak both Canaanite and Hebrew? I don't know. It's a good question.
And
Don't
she
know.
recognizes him.
But she recognizes, yeah, because he's like, I don't know. She might be, because she's the wife of Chever, who's an important person of the Canaanites. Maybe she's seen Sisera around because there's peace between Yavin and Chever. Maybe she saw the peace treaty being signed, and you come with an entourage when you sign, right? So maybe Sisera, as the captain of the army, was there to see it.
So he recognized her tent also.
Maybe they had meals together during the peace treaty signing ceremony. I don't know. All this is I'm making up as to it. So I'm just saying it's not unusual to me that she would have recognized him. He's a captain of the army. So in other words, he was on CNN. Canaanite National News.
And the invitation seems to have come from her.
Come in. Well, he's running. He's running to her. So before he has a chance to say anything, she sees him and says, "Come in, come in," and she covers him in a rug or a blanket. Why? Maybe to hide him, because clearly, why else would a captain, the head of the army, be running away if not his life is in danger? So she covers him up. So just what's supposed to come to mind is the beginning of the book of Joshua, when he sent scouts to the city of Jericho And the prostitute there hid those scouts on the roof of her house under something. Okay. 19. Vayomer eleha hashkinina ma'at mayim ki tsameti vatiftach et nod hechalav vatashkehu vatechasehu. So he says to her, please give me a little water to drink because I'm thirsty. She opens the bottle, I'd say and not even a flask, like a leather kind of canteen kind of thing. So she opens that container of milk. He asked for water. She gives him milk. She gave him to drink and she covered him up. Tashkehu gave him to drink. Vatechasehu covered him up. 20. Vayomer eleha amod petach haohel. The Hebrew is wrong. Vahaya im ish yavo ushe'elech va'amar hayesh po ish va'amart ayin. So he says to her, amod. So that's wrong Hebrew. Because it's supposed to be imdi. It's still ayin mem dalid, but when talking to a woman, you have to have a yud ending to it, right? Hebrew is generic, is gender based. So amod is what I would say to a man to stand up. Amod. If I say to a woman, I say imdi. Why the Bible has this mistake, I don't know. So he says to her, stand at the opening to the tent, and if a person would come by and asks, where am I? That's what's not stated here, but what that person would be asking, and asks and says, is there a man inside? And you should say, here he gets it right, amart. That is feminine. So he says it right here, but amod is not feminine. Say ayin, no, there isn't anyone. Okay. Vatikach Yael eshet chever et yetad haohel vatasem et hamakevet beyada vatavo elav balat vatitka et hayated birakato vatitznach baaretz vehu nirdam vayaaf vayamot. Okay, we'll see from this translation, it's a bizarre translation of what happened to him. Okay, so Yael, the wife of Chever, took the tent peg of the tent and put a hammer in her hand, makevet. So from the Hebrew, it might mean a little hammer. Okay, so it's not a huge mallet for a tent peg. It's a little hammer for a tent peg. So she has a tent peg and this hammer, this little hammer in her hand. She came to him quietly, or it says here softly. Now, in modern Hebrew, Lamed Aleph Tet means slowly. So maybe she approached him slowly or stealthily, and she hammered the tent peg into his temple, and it went all the way through into the earth. And he was sleeping, and he swooned, and he died. Now, I can't imagine swooning from that. That imagines like a fainting. So a little hammer and a tent peg, well, it's big enough, and she struck hard enough for the tent peg. If you could picture a tent peg, anybody who's been camping, a tent peg, okay, that could be used. We're not talking about a plastic tent peg that would be used today. We're talking about either an iron tent peg or a wooden tent peg. And it's sharp enough at the end to be able to go into the ground. It's not so blunt at the end. Okay, so it might not be so sharp, but sharp enough that it can go into the ground rather easily with force from a hammer. So it's a weapon that was at hand to her. She was strong enough to put it on his temple and strike it all the way through his head so it would go into the earth. Do you swoon from that? I don't know. I would think his whole head would have caved in from that. I don't, anyway, it's just interesting that he swooned and he died.
Maybe
Okay.
it's something like he fell backward, or he lost his balance, right?
Ya'af. No, he was lying down.
Oh,
Right. In other
Never
words,
mind
how could the only way, right? He was sleeping. It says here he was sleeping. V'hu dam. He was sleeping. So she's approaching him with the tent peg. She's about to hit him because he's asleep. So vaya'af. So to fly is la'uf, and oaf is bird, could be understood as poultry, right? If you're going into the supermarket in Israel to buy chicken, you'd go to the oaf section. Okay, so it's poultry. So, but so chickens don't fly, but ducks and geese do, and that would be in the poultry section too, right? Or maybe it's fowl. And is a specific kind of bird. Anyway, so he flew. Did he fly? I don't think you're flying when you have a tent peg in your head that just killed you. So I don't know. So it just says swooned. What does ya'of mean? Let me see what how Alter translates that. End of verse 21. As for him, he had been asleep, exhausted. So it's a description of him being asleep. And okay, so the ya'af, it means not ayin fei for flying, but ayin yud fei for being tired, ayef. So that's how he's translating it. So Yael, wife of Hever, took the tent peg, put a mallet in her hand, came to him stealthily, and drove the peg through the temple, and it sunk into the ground. Dash, as for him, he had been asleep exhausted, dash, and he died. So the ya'af is not a response to him being hit, but rather a response to his sleeping. So he was sleeping and very tired, I guess, from running away from this battle and having been thirsty, and also milk is supposed to make you tired. That's an issue too. That seems to be understood from context. That dairy. Why did Judith give Holofernes cheese? So milk or cheese makes you tired. Okay, so Abraham and Sarah gave the three angels butter. So another form of dairy, maybe to say you're going to stay a while, and you're going to be tired after eating. I'll have a place for you to sleep also.
Well,
Okay.
Judith gave the cheese, I thought, to make him thirsty, because cheese is,
Cheese will do that too. Okay.
and to drink wine.
Okay. So but I think there's also the element that it's supposed to make you tired. Okay. Well, we'll see in the commentaries if they bring that up. So let's just finish the chapter 22. Vehine varak rodef et Sisra vatetse Yael likrato vatomer lo lech ve'areka et ha'ish asher ata mevakesh vayavo eleha vehine Sisra nofel met v'hayated berakato. So now Barak was chasing after Sisera, and Yael came out to greet him. And she said to him, "Go and I'll show you the man that you're searching for. And he came to her, and there was Sisera lying dead, and the tent peg is in his temple. 23, Vayachna Elohim bayomahu et Yavin melech Canaan lifnei bnei Yisrael. And God on that day caused Yavin, king of Canaan, to succumb to or submit to the people of Israel. Vatelech, 24, Vatelech Yad bnei Yisrael haloch vekasha al Yavin melech Canaan ad asher hichritu et Yavin melech Canaan. And so the hand of the people of Israel got strong and hard on Yavin, the king of Canaan, until they destroyed Yavin, king of Canaan. Okay, so
Does that mean
yes.
that there were multiple armies that he demolished one army, and the only one that escaped was
Sisera.
yeah.
Yeah, so what there are other forces? Yes, there could be another, I don't know, like a royal guard or something like that stay behind to protect Yavin, right? Because it's not, these peace treaties are not necessarily worth the paper or the stone tablet that they're written on or chiseled on. You only trust somebody so much. So you're always, kings at this time, always need to be guarded in order to maintain their security, but also to maintain peace. So Sisera seems to have had the major army with him, and that was totally defeated. And then the other retaining army, or security force, was defeated too. Okay, so the commentary here, the very bottom of 190, Sisera escaped to the tent of Yael, fleeing in the opposite direction to that of his defeated army, so as to elude pursuit. Okay, 191, the tent. Being in southern Galilee, it was probably not far from the field of battle. Yael, as a noun, it means wild goat. I guess this is the first time the name Yael appears in the Bible. The wife of Hever the Kenite. Apparently Yael and Hever occupied separate tents. Right, that's what I was thinking too. This was her tent that he went to. Since Hever was obligated to aid Sisera, the latter hoped that his wife too would honor that treaty. Right, so Sisera going, but it doesn't explain why he went to her and not to him. Right, that would make sense. It seems it doesn't make sense why he went to Yael. Why didn't he go to Hever, especially since he's the one that made the treaty with Yavin? So wouldn't it make sense to go to him? Why did he go to her?
Well, in theory, the tents were close by. He was going in that direction. She saw him and ushered him in, according to what you just read.
No, Sisera went to Yael's tent. That's what verse 17 says. He's not going to the tent of the Canaanites. He's going directly to Yael's tent.
Because he wouldn't be suspected of going into her tent.
I don't know. It just doesn't seem right. You go to the guy that you know. You don't go to the wife of the guy that you know.
But we established that they had to know each other because she recognized
Still,
him.
yeah, but even if they know each other, it's untoward to do that. It just doesn't make sense. But we'll see if Alter says anything about it.
I would imagine she had a separate tent because there was more than one wife, maybe.
Yeah. I'm not arguing the fact that she had a separate tent. I'm only arguing the fact that he went directly to her, not to him first. He should have gone to him. He was, sure, I'll put you up. Here, let's go to my wife's tent and she'll give you food. That makes sense. The woman, the wife, is going to make sure that people are fed and given drink. But why did he go directly to her without going to him first? The etiquette proper etiquette would dictate going to the man first. Okay, so the commentary, yes,
I had another question, wait, you just left. Oh, why would she, if the Jabin's the king of the Hazor?
Yavin.
Okay, thank you. There was a peace with the Kenites, her
Yes.
husband. So why would she go against the peace?
Maybe she I don't know, she wanted to be a hero. Maybe she didn't like them.
Okay,
She had her own opinion about them. Sure, her husband did whatever he wanted. Maybe she thought that they should be with the Israelites and not with the Canaanites.
thank you.
Who knows?
Yeah,
Who knows? Okay, we don't know enough about the details of the story. I mean, that if you were to make a book out of this or a story out of this, you'd have to fill in some of these details. What's Yael's motivation here? Does she want to become queen of the Canaanites? Does she hate her husband? Who knows maybe she knew Barak from some former life before marrying Hever. Maybe he's like she's a jilted lover. Who knows? I don't know what her motivation was to do this. Okay, so for there was peace. Yael, however, was not obliged to aid Sisera, since the treaty had been enacted only with Yavin himself, not with his dignitaries. Alternatively, women were not bound by their husbands' political alliances, since they did not participate in politics. So in other words, the commentary is trying to figure out why Yael is acting on her own in this way. Moreover, the treaty was probably a general treaty enacted by the Kenites, not by Hever himself. Therefore, since Hever had broken away from the main body of the Kenites, his household was not bound by the treaty. Furthermore, since the Kenites were converts to Judaism, they could not be expected to side with the Canaanites against their own people and God. Okay, so maybe Hever led a sect of the Kenites to be with Israel and actually converted to Israelite religion. Others theorize that Hever entered into treaty under duress out of fear of the Canaanites. Okay. Rug. Though common in this sense in modern Hebrew, the exact meaning of the noun smicha in the Bible is uncertain. The Septuagint, the Greek translation, understood it as a tent curtain. Kimchi connects it with a Semitic root with the meaning be thick. And in Jewish Aramaic, the word denotes thick material. So like I said, in modern Hebrew, smicha is a blanket. Bottle made of goat's or lamb's skin. Okay, so it's like a canteen, a leather canteen. Gave him drink by providing milk instead of water. She succeeded in making him drowsy, since milk slackens the body and brings on sleep. Okay, so this is Rashi saying that, who's a vintner, who would know more about the effects of wine than the effects of milk. Stand, the Hebrew has the masculine singular of the imperative, right? What I was pointing out to you, how the Hebrew is wrong here. It should be imdi, not amod. Kimchi construes as the infinitive without the preposition lamed in indirect command, namely, he told her to stand. Right, in other words, a lamed is missing. So, vayomer eleha la'amod, he told her to stand. That's how Kimchi, who is a grammarian, understands why it's no yud here. So better keep the vowels and just say that a lamed is missing, as opposed to saying a yud is missing and then having to redo the vowels. So in other words, there could have been an asterisk here saying we should read this as imdi, but even the Masoretes, the ones who put the cantillation and the vowels in, didn't change that and say that we have to read it this way. They kept amod, so maybe that's why Kimchi is saying, well, easier to understand this as just a lamed is missing. Okay, so that's just grammatical stuff. It doesn't matter. Okay, 21, 192. After giving the instruction in the previous verse, he fell asleep. So in other words, because the wording here makes it unclear what the course of events was. Tent pin. Women used to drive the tent pins into the earth when camp was pitched. It was one of the wooden pegs which fastened the tent ropes to the ground. Okay, it's there's no source here, but if that's true that was women's job to set up the tent, I don't know. A hammer. This denotes a hammer having one pointed end used to hew stones and to puncture. The other end is flat and is used in metalwork. Kind of picture a hammer today, right? A hammer has a flat end that you drive the nail in, and has the other end, kind of two prongs that you can use to take a nail out, right? But it's also sharp, that end. Okay. Into his temples, he must have been lying on his side, for he was in a deep sleep, a circumstantial clause explaining how the act was possible without a struggle on Sisera's part. And behold, the particle in the Hebrew seems to call attention to the coincidence. We might render, and behold, there was Barak pursuing. Right, so Barak just happened to be coming by at that time. Barak pursued. We must suppose with Ralbag that in the first instance he had followed the fleeing Canaanites to the gates of Charoshet Goyim, but not finding Sisera, concluded that he might be hiding somewhere nearer the scene of the battle, so he turned back to search for him. Prevailed more and more. After Sisera's defeat, the king and his followers were eventually humbled. Yavin, king of Canaan, that is the dynasty of Yavin. Oh, so not just destroying him, but destroying his dynasty. So it ended with him. Okay, so let's look at altar, and then we'll be done for today because it's almost 10:25 already. So altar on chapter 4, page 126, below the line. And Ehud had died. The Hebrew indicates a pluperfect by placing the subject before the verb and using the suffix conjugation of the verb. Ehud's death leaves a hiatus, and Israel reverts to its wayward behavior. Yavin, king of Canaan. This designation is a kind of hyperbole because there was no single king of Canaan. Chatzor, however, was an important city, and so its king would have exercised considerable power among the city-states of Canaan. Later in the chapter, Yavin is called king of Chatzor. Iron chariots, as elsewhere, this characterization is an exaggeration, perhaps meant to emphasize the fearsome power of the chariots, because in this era, the chariots were wooden with at most iron reinforcing elements. A prophet woman. The translation mirrors the structure of the Hebrew, which does not say nevi'ah, prophetess, but isha nevi'ah. The introduction of the woman component, which is not strictly required by idiomatic usage, right? It could have just said nevi'ah, highlights the prominence of woman vis-a-vis man that is evident both in Deborah's relation to Barak and in the story of Yael and Sisera. She it was who judged Israel at that time. The figure of Deborah manifests the ambiguity of the role of judge. She is called a prophet because she evidently has a direct line of intelligence about God's strategic plans for Israel. In this, she resembles the martial judges who are invested with the Spirit of God. She's not called a judge, perhaps because she herself as a woman does not go out to the battlefield, but she is the subject of the verb judge, a capacity she exercises in the judicial sense, as becomes entirely clear in the next verse. Has not the Lord God of Israel charged you? Deborah would know what God commands Barak because she is a prophet. Draw around you. The Hebrew verb says merely draw, though the evident meaning and context is to muster or rally. This verb is pointedly repeated in God's speech in the next verse. Barak is to draw fighters around him, and God will then draw the enemy into a place where he will be defeated. If you go with me, I will go. Barak's hesitancy makes it evident that the male commander needs this woman behind him in order to go out to battle. Thus, he becomes a kind of proxy for Deborah, who is to all intents and purposes also a judge in a military sense. For in the hand of a woman, the Lord will deliver Sisera. The sentence has a double meaning. The woman in the first instance is the prophet woman Deborah, who can rightly take credit for the victory. It also turns out to be Yael, whose actual hand driving in the tent peg will finish off Sisera. Zebulun and Naphtali, in this prose version, which is almost certainly later than the poetic version in chapter 5, there are only 2 tribes involved and not an alliance of several tribes. We'll see chapter 5 next time, the song that is sung as a result of this victory. At his heels, the literal sense of the Hebrew is at his feet. We're on 128, Cain. This name is conventionally represented as Cain, but is here spelled as it is to indicate that the ethnic group is the same as Hever's identifying ethnic tag, the Canaanite. Has not the Lord sallied forth before you? In almost all the reports of battle in the Deuteronomistic history, Yahweh figures as the warrior god who defeats the enemy, and there is little representation of human acts of martial prowess or strategic cunning. The next verse invokes a characteristic locution. The Lord panics the enemy, thus causing his defeat. Sisera got down from the chariot. The same Hebrew verb is used here as when Barak came down from Mount Tabor. The first coming down is a rapid descent and an attack, and the second is a flight on foot from an encumbered or perhaps damaged chariot. Turn aside, my Lord, turn aside to me. Her words, with an alliteration of sibilants in the Hebrew, Surah Adoni, Surah Eli, are soothingly reassuring, almost seductive. All right, was Surah Eli. Depends on how you say it, right? She opened the skin of milk and gave him to drink. Sisera has asked for water. Yael, in a gesture of hospitality, offers him milk. The detail picks up a line from the poem in chapter 5, but whereas the poem, in an epic flourish, has her offering the milk in a princely bowl, the prose narrative turns this into the homey, realistic receptacle of a skin bag. It also highlights, as the poem does not, the ironic suggestion of Yael's playing a maternal role toward the man she's about to kill. First, she covers him with a blanket, then she gives him milk to drink and readjusts the blanket. Okay. Should a man come and ask you, is there a man here? The repetition of man plays against the previous repetitions of woman, as the man speaking is about to be undone by a woman. And it's sunk into the ground. This grisly detail indicates that Yael has driven in the sharpened tent peg with terrific power. Come that I may show you the man you seek. She was instructed to answer the question, is there a man here? By saying there is not. Meeting Barak in front of her tent, she volunteers the information that there is a man within before being asked, but she withholds the fact that it is a dead man. And look, Sisera was fallen, dead, the peg in his temple. As with the report of the courtiers seeing the dead Eglon in chapter 3, the character's visual point of view is marked by the presentative hine, look, and the sequence of details follows his visual intake. The identity of the man, Sisera, the fact that he is lying on the ground, the fact that he is dead, the instrument of death thrust through his temple. Page 130, God laid low Yavin, king of Canaan. Yavin had not taken part in the battle. Now, after the defeat of his principal force and his armored corps under the command of Sisera, he and his kingdom are laid low by the Israelites. The hand of the Israelites came down even harder. The literal sense of the Hebrew is the hand of the Israelites went ever harder. Okay, so that's the heroic story of Deborah and Yael. We'll continue next Friday, and hope everybody has a good rest of the day and a Shabbat Shalom. See you all next week.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.